Hello folks, and welcome to part 5 of Beethoven's Secret Life. And I really hope you've been enjoying all these previous podcasts, uncovering the little secrets that are not so well known as the usual stuff. Now, we have a couple more little secrets to uncover before we look at the teenage Beethoven and finally his relationship with his mentor, Joseph Haydn. Okay, let's look at the rumour that was flying about. Was Beethoven an illegitimate child? Now, there was a famous rumour spilling around all Europe, and it was said to be that Beethoven was the King of Prussia's son. Illegitimate, of course. The interesting thing is, Beethoven, as I told you, using the von in his name, was quick to use this rumour to bolster his reputation among the elite and among the public. And he was the kind of guy, that bucked the trends, and he was seen as a kind of revolutionary in his attitude toward life. Probably got that from his dad. In fact, I think when he was about 10, he had learned all he needed to learn from his dad. His dad couldn't teach him much more. Anyway, this thing about the King of Prussia, the rumour about him being the bastard child of the king. And this was printed basically in France in a dictionary of musicians, basically. Beethoven's father was named to be Friedrich Wilhelm II. And in a book called The Conversations Lexicon, and it built on that. This is where you get the accretions, the embellishments. And they said that basically Beethoven's father was Frederick the Great. As I said, this myth circulated all over Europe, and we'll come to one of Beethoven's friends in a wee minute, Franz Wegeler, and he had said, why are you allowing this rumour to spread all over Europe? It's doing damage to your loving mother's good reputation. So he obviously didn't like the fact that his best friend was allowing this rumour to spread just for the sake of building a reputation. But however, a year after this nonsense, Beethoven basically gave in and said to Wegeler, well, okay, let's set the record straight, that I am not the illegitimate son of the Prussian king. Nor, who did we say there? We said Frederick the Great. Yeah, so he set the record straight on that. So that's another secret blown away. This isn't so much a secret, but not a very well-known thing, because there were some authors and critics and people who kind of biography type people, who had said, was Beethoven black? Was he of Caribbean, African origin? And the scholarship was saying that there was a possibility that his mother, right, Maria, had put it about a bit, and she might have had an affair with a Spaniard or an African, or that Beethoven's ancestors, who were Flemish, mixed with people of African descent, especially when the region that they lived in was under Spanish monarchical rule. And the Berbers, who were known to the Europeans as the Moors, they basically came from North Africa, and this theory is not based on who he actually was. It's based on certain descriptions of him, because they said that his hair was kind of frizzy and kind of rough, right? Like an African hair, that his skin was dark he had a dark complexion, and he was swarthy and stuff. But nobody ever called him a Moor during his lifetime. And according to sources, the Viennese people were keenly aware of mulattoes. That's what we would call mixed race people and other types of cultures that were moving around at that time. So that's another little secret you might not have been aware of, that some people believe that Beethoven had African or a black heritage. Now, I think there's possibilities that we all go back to Africa or Mesopotamia and all these places, because man's been migrating across the world since he first set foot on the planet, if you like. So let's leave that aside. One thing I can tell you about that's related to that was not that Beethoven was black, but he did work with a well-known black violinist. This guy was known as, I think it was Samuel Bridgetower. I forget the name wrong, forgive me, but his second name was definitely Bridgetower, as in Tower Bridge in London. And he was a virtuoso on the violin, and I do know that Beethoven actually worked with him on various occasions, on various pieces of music. So possibly if they were seen together, get out for coffee or whatever it might have been, maybe that's where people thought, oh, see a black guy as well, because he's dark and he's got that kind of tight, kind of frizzy type hair, you know what like people are. So that's another little thing put to rest, okay? Let's now look at some of Beethoven's influences, okay? Beethoven had a lot of people who influenced him, basically. He met a chap called Franz Wegler, right? It's Wegeler, but I'm just saying Wegler. And he was a childhood friend of Beethoven, basically. And he remained important to Beethoven, basically, right throughout his life. And, being a friend of Beethoven was a bit like a poison chalice, it was a bittersweet experience, because one day was sugar and the next day was that brown stuff. That was just Beethoven's personality, and Wegler put up with it all these days, basically. So much so that I think even Beethoven got a dose of shame and would often write to Wegler and say, oh, look, I'm really sorry, I've treated you abysmally, and you've been a constant good companion and a trusted and loyal friend, and, all that kind of stuff. So we would pour out his guts to this guy. But also, Wegler was Beethoven's confidant as well as a friend, and Beethoven would often share a lot of things with Wegler, and it was Wegler actually that ended up getting Beethoven a job with the well-known Browning family, and they were very wealthy, sophisticates basically, and Beethoven secured the job through Wegler as a piano teacher for the kids. And he struck up a very, very good friendship with the mother, the wife, if you like. And I think she kind of took Beethoven under her wing, if you like, and it was she that was instrumental in teaching him about the finer things in life. Certainly in regards to literature, she would teach him like Shakespeare and the Greek tragedies and poetry and all that kind of philosophy and all these kind of things, ethics, morals, philosophy, all the great philosophers of the time. So she was instrumental. I think there was also a touch of different languages, a smattering of that put in. So basically she helped this rough diamond be more educated and opened his mind, expanded his mind to other things. And he eventually became a permanent fixture in the family, like a lodger, if you like, teaching the kids, living in-house, if you like. I wish I could stop saying if you like, it's just one of those affectations. But he did that and he really enjoyed his time there. He was very happy. They were happy with him. He was happy with them. So that was a good period in his life. And of course, as I said, Wegler was a guy who introduced him to lots of different kinds of people. So through the Brunings, Beethoven managed to move on again and met various aristocrats. Let's have a quick look back at the people who did influence Beethoven up until that time, because Beethoven, as I said, wasn't a musical prodigy like Mozart. He had to be taught and he had to learn from the right kind of people, and all these things helped to make him the composer that he was, basically. But one of the first people that was instrumental in his life was an organist, a court organist, who was his grandfather's pal, and he was teaching Ludwig to play organ. And later on, when Beethoven probably had surpassed the lessons, there was a man who was in his 30s, and he met Beethoven, and his name was Christian Neef, and he was an excellent musician, this guy. And also, like the mother in the family, that the Brunner family, he was an intellectual as well, so he would speak to Ludwig about lots of different things and help expand his mind. And of course, being the kind of guy he was, he soon secured a position of being in charge, like a Kapellmeister type of thing. And this basically allowed Beethoven to get his foot in the door into the court orchestra, first as a harpsichord player and then later on playing the viola. Now, some people have said, I wonder what instruments Beethoven played. Well, he obviously played organ, pianoforte, harpsichord, viola and violin. As far as I know from sources, he was a very, very average violin player, nothing to write home about, and I suspect he probably was the same on viola, So I would say his main instrument, the one that he shone on, was obviously piano, although he dabbled in a couple of others. His main one was piano, That's what I would say. He was a great lover of Bach, J.S. Bach. Obviously, being an organist, Bach is the big cheese. And Beethoven got to the stage where he knew Bach's work outside in. And Bach had a book called The Well-Tempered Clavier, keyboard basically. And Beethoven knew that inside out, if you like. So these kind of people influenced the young teen Beethoven. And then he comes into royalty, and there's a Count Waldstein, and he was basically, I suppose, the first wealthy person to take Beethoven under his wing. The two of them struck up a great friendship, very sincere friendship, and Waldstein was a patron of the arts, if you like. Mozart had his patron of the arts as well, patrons of the arts rather, and because Waldstein chummed about with Beethoven, it opened doors for other people as well. And through this here, it was Waldstein basically that ended up introducing Ludwig to Joseph Haydn. And by that time, here's the funny thing, I want to make a little statement here. You know that when big stars start to get on the wane, I'm talking about in modern times, they often look to the young rising stars, say for instance singers, right? Elvis, Tom Jones, whoever it might be, whenever they're beginning to wane, whenever their career's waning, what they do is they team up with some upcoming young rising star, and they do duets, and they put them on their albums and stuff like that. And this is all, and again, good business sense, because it means that the big stars being introduced to a younger audience, and